Hi, Christine. Very nice to meet you virtually. I just want to start off by saying thank you so much for trying both of these writing prompts and sharing some of your work with me. It is always a pleasure to get to know someone just a little bit through their first few poems. So thank you very much, and thanks for getting them in on time. I'm going to start with your questions. I really appreciate that you included specific questions with each of your poems, so thank you for that as well. Um, so in each sentence, I'm gonna call it a stanza. In each stanza, I write in a very stream of consciousness type of way, although I try to stop in between each sentence so it doesn't become overwhelming. And is it confusing? You know, um, I don't think it's confusing, but I do think that that is a great question. And I think that that's a wonderful way to approach your edits of poems, right? Is in a first draft to write stream of conscious, to put everything down on the page that you feel is necessary to put on the page to describe the experience you're describing in the poem. But then when you put on your editing cap and you return to that poem, that's the time to say, okay, does this make sense? Is this saying exactly the right thing in exactly the right way that I want it to be described in my work? Um, I don't find it very confusing. I do think it flows. It doesn't bother me that you jump around a lot chronologically. There's actually no way for a reader to know that you're jumping around chronologically, right? Since we're not quite as familiar with your life as you are with your own life. Um, I do very much like the way that you end the poem with "I am a soft, tender brick wall." I really like the contradiction in that last line. My writing life. So does this make sense in terms of writing? Yeah, it sounds to me like it's an ocean. Your writing life is like an ocean. It takes the space it needs. It flows, it ebbs and flows. Sometimes it's a whisper on the sand, and sometimes it's a rushing. So I think it does work. I do think, I feel like you could expand this. I feel like it could go a little bit farther. So, what are more things that you'd like to include? What are other ways that you could describe the ocean that also describe your writing life? That would be the question for me. I know you say um, in the first sentence, my life as a writer feels a little clunky to you. It's like I always feel like when I'm writing a poem, I don't want to say always. I often go back and wind up cutting the first two lines, the first four lines, the first few sentences if I'm writing prose. Um, I feel like it takes a minute for our brains to kick into high gear and to kick in the creativity and the juiciness of what we're really getting at. So it's never a bad practice to go back and look at your first line or your first two lines and say, do I really need to keep this? Or is this writing towards something? Is this writing into the thing before the actual poem starts? So I think this might be um, one of those circumstances. So what would it feel like if your poem started all at once? It is enormous, all consuming, engulfing everything in its path. I think that might be a better start. And I think your instincts, due to what your questions are kind of leading you there. So thank you so much. A pleasure to read your first two poems, and I look forward to reading more. Please don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions about any of our prompts or our class. Thanks so much, Christine.